Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Writer's Chat. We are so glad you're here. And I have a very loud bird in my background, as you might be able to hear. But I'm Norma Poor, and I'm joined by my co host, Melissa Stroh. And we are excited about our very special guest today. And I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and let her go ahead and introduce our guest. And I'll be back at the end to tell you a little bit more about Writer's Chat.
Sounds good. Thank you, Norma, and welcome everybody. We're so glad you're here with us, either live in our audience or watching the replay on YouTube. Like Norma said, we have very special return guests. It's been a little while since we've had our friends Scott and Becky Minor back on Writers Chat to talk about Realm Makers, and we thought it's time to have them back and to learn about the latest one. But some of you watching may not have been there way back when we first had them on, or you may never have even heard of Realm Makers and Scott and Becky. So I'm going to share a little bit about them before we let them jump right in. Um, Here, Becky Minor or Rebecca Minor founded Realm Makers in 2013 to serve Christian writers whose work falls into the gap of too weird for the usual church-going crowd, but not quite weird enough for the sci-fi fantasy convention world. And she writes faith-infused sword and sorcery fantasy and has published 7 novels. And Scott Minor was the executive director of Realm Makers, having assumed the role in 2020, and since has been elevated to the CEO and kind of shops around. I hear I'll have to have you elaborate a little more on that, Scott, since I have a bit of an older bio on you, but I assume that everything is still kind of similar and that you are still like to help Christian authors of speculative fiction navigate the realities of the quickly evolving publishing world. And he oversees all aspects of the company from their online presence to the bookstore to the annual conference. And he's passionate for the excellence in arts, entrepreneurial spirit, and willingness to expend copious amounts of elbow grease and have helped propel Realm Makers to the forefront of the Christian writing community. And I like the last part of this one where he's not driving a trailer of books to a homeschool convention or answering messages on Slack. You might find him directing a Shakespeare play with a cast of elementary age children or blurting puns that make his teen sons cringe. That is a little while back, so you may have to update me on that one. But I do know that you guys were traveling to a homeschool convention, or several, was it? Was it? There was
So
more than
far, so
one.
far this year, yep.
Oh, wow. So you guys have been pretty busy, but welcome to Writers Chat. Welcome back. And we're eager to hear about Realm Makers today. So yeah, I'll just turn it over to you and let you take it away.
Well, our teen sons are now mostly adults. Our youngest is 19 now, but they're still cringing at the puns. So one of them has kind of bought into delivering the puns as well. But, it's one of those things that you either just jump right in or you decide to be on the opposing army for those. So we
Passing on the
definitely have
baton.
a lot of banter going on. Um, but I guess was it 2021 when we were last here? So
Yeah.
it's been a wild ride. It's been good. Things have grown from that point where we gather still about 500 authors for the writers conference. But last year, with Scott's help, we expanded our conference bookstore, which was essentially a little group of however many authors we could squeeze into the foyer of the Westport Sheraton Chalet in their little pre-function space, they call that. We expanded that out to a convention center last year and had the first Realm Makers Expo.
Oh,
So that was a big, big leap. Very cool. Lots of exhibitors. How many would you say we ended up with last year, Scott?
Well, in terms of exhibitors, we probably had about 120 exhibitors, but about like 250 registered people as exhibitors.
So they,
Well, let's see, we had 50 authors and 80 booths, so more like 130.
which was really a healthy outpouring of awesome people. And it wasn't just authors. We had animators who were previously in the Disney crew that are doing faith-based projects now. We also partnered a little bit with the Christian game developers. They were holding their conference on site at the same convention center, kind of doing a space sharing. So they had a bunch of really cool gaming demos and things going on. And they just proved to be storytellers and kind of the same kind of nerdy people that the Realm Makers writers are. So that was our big change for last year. And we are continuing with the Expo model this year, except we're back in St. Louis rather than Grand Rapids for last year. So St. Louis, since the chalet was, well, outgrown, we loved the property. It was a great space to kind of convene. But the same company owns the St. Louis Union Station, which is a historic train station from when St. Louis was the gateway to the West and was highly trafficked as people forged past the Mississippi. The train shed and all of the infrastructure from that historic building has been converted into a convention center that is connected to the Hilton Hotel. So it's going to be really, the ambiance there is just amazing. It's going to be a great unified space for us where as people are headed to their classes, they walk straight through all of our exhibitors. The appointments will be easily findable for people who are pitching to agents and editors, and it'll be a full 3 days. So we'll do Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of content. And those who are doing our pre-conference workshop, when they show up on Wednesday, they'll have a class from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. with a New York agent who will be teaching that. So it's kind of an extravaganza this year. Um, and registrations are coming in. It's always, sometimes we're like, how is it possible? There's still people who are just finding us, but we're super, super glad that there are those folks who are.
That's awesome. Wow. It has really grown, hasn't it?
Absolutely. In scope and just we we know that there are other industries where people are telling stories where Christians are feeling a little bit on the margin. Um, and as we've seen, people leaving places like Hollywood in the game industry. Although there are those who are in the mainstream industry, like last year, one of the artistic directors from Riot Games who was actually the person who developed League of Legends. If anyone's a gamer and has been following that game for a long time, he was with us. And, there are places where people need to sort of hold a torch if they're not operating in a purely Christian space. So that's been something that we've been blessed to see people working at doing.
So what's the draw
Good.
with games and all that? I've noticed you mentioned illustrators, animators, and gaming people. Is this a thing that's really becoming popular with spec fiction and all?
Well, if I may, when I have been going kind of outbound to other conferences like NRB or the Christian Game Developers Conference or other Christian communities of artists who are operating in popular culture, I found a lot of commonality and similarities between the people, the same nerds, just in a different creative medium. And everyone felt just as lonely, essentially. When they're doing their work in popular culture, they feel like they kind of have to like keep their head down and not be free to talk about their faith. And when they're at church, they talk about what they do, they get a lot of pushback there too, right? In terms of, oh, you create video games, my 22-year-old's addicted to video games. You're the problem, right? And it's more along the lines of, okay, well, our kids, and to a large degree when it comes to video games, our boys need a rite of passage. They need something. They're striving to have a battle to fight and win, and life doesn't give that to them. It's just, when they're young, it's school. And so these video games kind of give that to them. So if we want them to have another experience, we have to give that to them. And that's where Christians entering the video game world are facing pushback from both angles, but also striving to do kind of missionary work, not only in the development of video games, but also in as missionaries with the headphones on in the games that are interactive and actually talking to people within the communities in there. Because the economy of video games has exceeded both movies and music combined. And it's a place where we should be. And it's amazing meeting the people who are ministering in those communities. But same thing with animation, same thing with, if you're a Marvel illustrator, a Disney animator, there's a lot of pushback you can get in the Christian community because people have an expectation that I guess that you shouldn't work for a company that they don't necessarily agree with the direction that they're going. Instead of just being a professional, being in the world, being a light where you are, and exercising your creative skills. So it was really enlightening to discover the similarities between our authors who are creating these story worlds and these other industries. Then I started to realize that our own authors aren't only writing books. Some of them are audiobook narrators. Some of them are illustrators for covers or for graphic novels. Some of them are filmmakers. And so by broadening into these other industries, we're serving the more entire creative person of the people that we serve at Realm Makers, and providing some collaboration, cross-industry networking that's really essential for broadening their professional opportunities.
Yeah, I think that
What
sounds
would
great.
you say to Christians who disagree with having magic or a little bit of wizardry in your stories?
I'll give a quick reply and then kind of pass it over to Becky, though. There's a degree to which there needs to be an understanding of what's true and what's fiction, right? You know, there's magic and wizardry and all sorts of terrible, witchcraft that is true. And then there's, what is the source of power in I don't have a story world. I'm not the writer, but just speaking for the author, how do you wrap a magic system around what the source of power is in a given fantasy world? And in one of the series was one of the first series that we started selling with the Realm Makers bookstore was the Songkeeper Chronicles by Gillian Bronte Adams. And in that, like, the source of power is the song that was sung at the creation of the world, right? So it's really grounded in sort of the the creator is the source of truth and power in that particular world. And when the worldview is coherent, it kind of aligns with how
Right.
you use power, what the goals are, that there is good and evil, and one is good and one is bad. Um, there's It's Christians who can identify what's actually true and not just play games with it. Like, oh yeah, well there's demons or angels and they became friends, and then I'm just writing my fiction and just playing games with it. You know, that's honestly there are dangerous places you can go with it.
Mhm.
And without Christians in the space, well,
Get dark.
it can get
It gets dark.
really, really out there, and some Christians go very dark with their fiction because it's only in the darkness that the light
Yeah.
is going to bring some degree of hope, right? So there's a
Mhm.
much more optimistic tone, but specifically in terms of magic, I imagine Becky might have more to say about that.
Well, the first thing that I would push back on a lot of, say, a parent who comes to us and says, I don't think my kids should be reading magic. Um, my first question is, have you read the Chronicles of Narnia? Have you read The Lord of the Rings? Because if they've read those, then they're already in that place of reading faith-based authors who have created worlds that have things they call legitimately magic in them. And the reasons that they include such things are very much what Scott was saying in terms of Tolkien's um, the class of people that the wizards are. It's not magic hocus pocus or witchcraft. It is a divinely given power from the creator of that universe. And of course, we all know that C.S. Lewis is working with an allegory in a non-Earth setting. And so the deep magic before the dawn of time, again, is talking about the power of God in creation and God's plan and how he enacts that miraculously. So if they're at the point where they're saying, "Oh, we don't read C.S. Lewis or Gerald Tolkien because of the magic," then we're like, "Well, then this is definitely all not for you. You're going to need to read real world stories." And everybody has their, they have their line. We don't want to put a stumbling block in front of anyone, of course. And so we want to, heed the words of Paul and make sure that we are not causing a weaker brother to stumble. Um, but at the same time, if Tolkien and Lewis get a pass, pretty much everything we sell in the Realm Makers bookstore, for example, is going to fall into that similar category of anything that is a power that someone is wielding is either an innate, almost like biological, just trait that that person has, just asking what if somebody was able to do these things, or it is a divinely given power or an appropriated evil power. That's the approach that I take with my magic specifically, is that there are certain people who have a level of giftedness and they have a connection to the creator that he is able to work through them in order to enact his will in the world. Whereas there are those who choose to grasp that power for their own by their own means and for their own gain, and that power eventually enslaves them. So it being a little bit analogous to the idea of sin being something that chains us. And that I think is going to be in one form or another a very similar approach to the magic of the books that you'll find a lot of Christians writing. So if that's okay, if that feels like, okay, my child or I can feel comfortable with that level of analogy, then everything that our speculative fiction writers is basically for them. It's just a matter of picking your audience and your tone from there.
Mhm.
I love that you choose to accept that, as all genres really should, that some people will like it and some people won't. And that's okay. That's all part of the individual conviction that God puts on us. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate that you all stand behind that.
Thank
And
you.
I love that how you described about your magic, how there's some that are gifted and those that are allowed to be dark. And if you really study your Bible, that's truth, because Satan is allowed to have the power that he has. God allows that. So, in a sense, there's a lot of truth in what biblical truth in what you're sharing.
And you
I
may be
appreciate
familiar.
that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. You may be familiar with C.S. Lewis's concept of getting people past the watchful dragons when he's talking about helping people access faith when they maybe are wary of it, and the trappings of church as they see it, the stained
Mhm.
glass and the liturgy, how those things may be off-putting to them. But a story is a way that you can present concepts of faith to people and get around the preconceptions they have about, oh, if it's going to be a Christian book, then it's going to be preachy. And I think we've really come a long way in Christian fiction of not feeling like if the book doesn't present the gospel, then it hasn't done its job. We can tell stories that point toward truth, that give you a sense of underlying truth without necessarily feeling like the book's job is to save somebody when they read it.
Mhm.
Or beating them over the head with it. I
Exactly.
like that. And we've had this discussion before on Writers Chat, I believe, that even having a Christian worldview, God uses to create curiosity in those that he's drawing to himself. And that's, I think, a way that we can be a good witness for him. What do you think about that?
One of the phrases I was using early on with Realm Makers, we don't use it so much now, but I still want to make a shirt or something that says creative in his image,
Mm.
because I feel that those of us who are creative, we have a special connection that God is a creator and we're imitating our parent. And
Mm.
that is very much the way a child shows their admiration for something, is by imitation. And so for those of us who have a creative bent, um, it really does, it's part of God's thumbprint really on our souls as his creation to want to be like him and to create. And when we keep that in the proper order of uh, being inspired and taking our ideas to the Lord and saying, Lord, I want to write what you want me to say. I want you to use my voice for something good, for something that people need to hear. then I just really feel like that relationship is very fulfilling. I don't know if you're familiar with Alan Arnold at all. He works for Ransomed Heart, um, and he just talks a lot about just joining with God in what he's doing and creating with God as a partner in the creative process. Obviously, God loves to create, so why would he not want to be part of that process with us as we learn how to tell his story in various ways?
Yeah.
When you think of that creativity in some of the worlds that your authors create are just so interesting and amazing. And yet if you look at what God's created and the some of the goofy, funny looking things that are out there and the very strange things that are out there, you know, to me, those things can very easily lead to uh, what am I looking for? What's the word? Help an author imagine some weird thing in a world based on something they've seen actually out in the real world.
Mhm.
In 2020, when the conference had to go virtual, and N.D. Wilson was our keynote speaker that year, what he spoke about was that, when he's asked, from because, being a Christian, why he writes fantasy, he said it's because I'm a realist, right? We live in a fantasy world, traveling on this ball, going, miles and miles per second, through outer space around this big ball of light, that
Mhm.
without that light, we would die, We take dirt and water and starlight, and then suddenly there's an apple, and then we shove it in our face, and we survive. Um, this table that's in front of me that my laptop is on is, if you really dig into the science of it, is mostly not there, you know at the atomic level, but yet we trust that my laptop's not going to fall to the floor and then to the earth through all this mass. It's just really amazing when you think of how the world works, how the body works, and to just accept that if you were to look at it from outside, it's a fantasy world, you know. So so that was really fun to listen to, but also really insightful in terms of how to think about this. And you can go even further to recognize that there's a lot of hesitance, like in my entire Christian life, like nobody's ever talked about the supernatural. And there's, while you kind of recognize, like, okay, yes, there are angels, and I understand the story of the Christmas story, and the angels came down from heaven, and all this, and it's kind of happy, but in reality, there is a supernatural world that we scarcely understand,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and to disbelieve that as just, well, we're not going to talk about that, we're that's too dark, right? That comes from fear and
Yep.
ignorance.
Mhm.
Not that I'm any less ignorant of it. We'll know much more once we, shuffle
Right.
off this mortal coil. But until
Right.
then, I'm going to have a healthy fear and to seek understanding, and at the very least, know what I don't understand. There's something out there that I don't understand, and best not to play games with it, for sure. But as an adult, understanding, oh, so there are people who actually wield this, like witches, warlocks, like that's, we like to think, oh, well, way back when in the Bible times and people were worshiping Baal, you know, so you think they're not doing that anymore? Way back when we were reading the Bible and we read about these things, people, um, Jesus casting a demon out of a man, like why would we think demons are not doing that today? But
They
we
are.
just kind of put it off to the side, don't think about it, um, and it's to our detriment. You know, there's a lot of danger there, and so as Christians in this space, I'm not saying they can't go too far the wrong way, but the
Right.
more we are in the company of other Christians, right, and not relegated to going to the secular events, the secular conferences, where horror is just full of chainsaws and gore,
Right.
um, whereas Christian horror has more of a fear that drives you to understand what's true about the dark nature of this world, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
it is the closer we all get to Jesus, the closer we'll all get to each other, and the more we'll stay a bit, the ship will stay righted,
Mhm.
as opposed to just everybody descending into chaos for no community, right?
Mhm.
As the CEO of Realm Makers, all these authors are focused on their stories, their story worlds. And I'm focused on the authors, the people, right? And so as I experience what is happening among the people in our community, it's really driven me to focus all my time and energy and effort on nurturing the community and helping the authors to have more opportunities, to have more community, to have an authentic sounding board of other Christians who don't just simply go like, well, that's just too dark. You shouldn't be writing this stuff. How can you call yourself a Christian and write horror or whatever it is that they just don't understand? And the more and more time I spend, I find that it's the younger generations. Like we go to these homeschool conferences, and they're creating intelligent kids who are creative and write very well, and the genres they're writing in, to a large degree, are these speculative genres. We have to be there. We have to be there continuing to shepherd them, right? Continuing to nurture them. And if they're writing in these genres, it's our fault. We grew up with Jaws and Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and we enjoyed those things. And nowadays, that's what uh, life is so crazy and chaotic and fantastical that these stories stand out because they are
Yeah.
trying to say stories that might be rather mundane if you drove down to the themes, but having to place it in a world that captures your attention. That's what the storytellers are trying to do in order to be able to have some degree of influence and impact.
Yeah.
And to your point, recently my husband and I just rewatched 4, 5, and 6 of Star Wars, the original three,
Right,
and
right.
talking about here, what, 50 years later almost, it's still a very popular movie series. And yet it's boiled down to its essence. It's light fighting off the darkness using a flashlight that's got a long beam, basically, is, comes down to. But what has made that movie such a classic? Why is it still so popular? The very first one came out in 1977. So, what has made that still so popular? Next year will be 50 years later.
I think that the classic form of the hero's journey,
Mhm.
people recognize, they resonate with
Yeah.
the way stories are structured. I mean, there's a reason there are only so many story structures, depending on which writing teacher you talk to, 7 or 9 or 13 or whatever. But there really are certain stories that resonate with us as created beings, where we know truth when we see it, even if it's, dressed up as a Jedi, where
Mhm.
that we are all children we have all inherited sin. We're all Darth Vader's kid when it comes down to it. And we have to decide,
True.
are we going to choose the light that's extended to us? Or are we going to give in and follow the sin nature that is embedded? Um, and that idea of overcoming and the idea of there being someone who is the savior that will help this broken world and give us a way to transcend that into and out, essentially.
Hmm.
And the one thing with Star Wars too is it was a groundbreaking choice in movie making. There really was no
Nothing like
all-encompassing
it.
story world like that. And the genius of George Lucas in some ways was that merchandising had not been a thing before Star Wars. It Scott saw, I believe, sat and watched me write my no, maybe you didn't, but it was the Oedipus paper. You sat and watched me write. But in college, my film history senior paper was on the transformation of Hollywood via the Star Wars franchise in terms of, okay, before, you had your Westerns, you had some of your weird kind of sci-fi that was always very trippy and sort of hippie, psychedelic informed. But then we had this basically kind of space Western that comes on the scene where, that underdog and relatability and the hero's journey structure that is resonates with just about everybody. And then, oh, well, everybody who saw this can now go to the store and continue to play the movie. So kids played with action figures a lot later into their teens,
Yeah.
than they do now. Kids were younger then. But everybody's got their Millennium Falcon and their Luke and their Leia, and they can continue to live that story. And so that really did transform the way Hollywood started to make movies, for better or for worse. In some ways, I think it kind of hit a sweet spot and took a downturn, as things do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
world sort of trends towards trends away toward entropy after a while.
Yeah, I agree. And the technology that they came up with was cutting edge.
Yes.
There was so far beyond its time that now, with everything being AI and digitally enhanced and all of that, there's nothing that really surprises us as far as what can be accomplished in a movie
True.
anymore. And we can say the same about our stories. As many of us have said here on Writers Chat, there's nothing new under the sun. So, how
Right.
can you take a fantasy story, uh, something that would apply to realm makers, and make it stand out? What are you guys looking for as far as a book that would stand out from the rest?
Personally, I would say that if I were counseling an author, is just um, to make sure that you're digging for truth that is deep and resonant. Whenever something is packaging truth in different skin, um, you're going to have the draw of just the interesting premise. You're like, oh, this is set in a world where something is very compelling, but without the truth that weaves through it, the story will come and go. So I think that we see a lot right now of the commercializing, where people are just saying, okay, I'm just going to write what's popular right now because I know I can sell a whole bunch of books. And okay, that's a goal that you can have if you want to just, you know, be the person who's making some money at books. You can take that approach. But if somebody wants a book to withstand the test of time, they need to look past or perhaps just ignore the trends that are going on. The dragon is evergreen. It doesn't always have to be a dragon, but that giant monster that must be defeated for the betterment of those that are persecuted by it. That's always going to speak well to an audience. The fresh package is just the thing that is the challenge to come up with in terms of what's the twist. And a lot of times I think the most successful authors are taking that truth and those tropes and in the plot they're figuring out how to go a different way than the reader expects. Subverting expectation, I think, is the author's job a lot in this modern writing world.
As we get into some of the other industries that we serve through the Expo, and because they're all telling stories in one way or another, Christians are have always been in these industries, but more so the ability to enter these industries like filmmaking. The bar has become much more easy to attain. You could do it with an iPhone now, but the Christian's influence, when done rightly, is inserting hope into what otherwise would simply be a dark world with no hope. It just nihilism and hedonism, and whomever wields the most power gets the spoils. And it was described by Steve Taylor, who is one of the keynote speakers at our conference this year. He's not a writer of fantasy and science fiction. He was a musician back in the 80s. And in reading into some of his bio, he described himself as, like, at the time, he was enjoying groups like The Clash, music groups like The Clash. But he found that it really lacked hope. And that was what sparked his inspiration as a musician to kind of have these slap you in the face lyrics, but then provide an element of hope, right? To kind of like shake you out of your complacency and provide truth that offers direction. He did it with satire. If you look at some of the titles of his songs or the lyrics of his songs, it generally says the opposite of what the words are saying. Like, I want to be a clone. That's, he's saying the opposite. Just like the Huey Lewis and the News song, I want a new drug. It's like he's talking about love, right? Not actually a drug. And when Christians enter these industries, it's impossible to avoid your worldview, provided that you are wise and knowledgeable and pursuing truth, not just tantalizing. You can make a very positive impact in whatever industry you're involved in.
Hope is having its moment right now. There's a People are talking about a subgenre that they're calling hope punk. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the other punks out there, but there's cyberpunk was kind of the beginning of it, where it's a futuristic sort of dystopian world where everybody is influenced by the cyber world. And from there, steampunk and every other kind of punk, diesel punk, etc., kind of takes a chunk of history sometimes and deals with it. But hope punk now is essentially saying we've had enough in the world of the nihilist fantasy and science fiction. It's time for us to begin putting hope back into stories, letting heroes actually be heroes. Um, and I think that's just a reflection of the society that we're in. Art is sometimes a reflection of society and sometimes it's a driver of it. But the society that we've been in for a while has been so um, cynical about everything and so narcissistic about everything that the whole idea of a self-sacrificing hero who gets to win and gives people hope is now the fresh thing, and everyone's fatigued of just coming away from a book feeling terrible. That now there is a subset of people that's growing that are looking for that hopeful literature, which I'm glad they're looking for it, because I can't imagine steeping and writing things that are just so laden in weight. And there's a battle going on as well in terms of just moral code, where the young men of our kids' generation, our kids are college and career age now, that they're really looking for structure, and some of them are really looking for liturgy, even if they haven't been in a religious upbringing at all. They're looking for that sense of order, And I believe that we're very well equipped as Christian writers to bring that sense of order because God is a God of order, not a God of chaos. And our stories can reflect that.
That brings a question to my mind. Um, so, under the umbrella of speculative fiction, what are the genres and subgenres that you're seeing more of now in realm makers? What kind of authors are coming to realm makers?
Well, fantasy is always going to be the top dog. It outsells every other genre, I think 7 to 1 or something like that. The statistics may have changed, but sci-fi is getting more traction. It used to be like, oh, you publish a sci-fi book just because you want to, but the fantasy books are the ones that are making the money, kind of thing as a publisher. But we're seeing a lot more science fiction. There we enjoy as the Realmmakers bookstore having several tables of just Christian written sci-fi, which is funny because if you go to a we call it a secular event, which isn't necessarily the right way to put it, but if you go to just a general book festival or something, we've had times where people will say Christian science fiction, isn't that an oxymoron? Because of the perceptions that people have of Christians not accepting science. Whereas the more we look at science, the more it points to God. And you just keep finding more and more things that are like, oh, look, intelligent design is probably the only way this could happen. Um, but as we live in a society where our lives are science fiction, those of us who are older than, just young 20s, our lives have become the things that we were like, oh my gosh, isn't that something they had in the Jetsons? Um, so there's a degree to which science fiction has become almost more relatable. And with the advent of AI and with the things that are being pursued the higher levels of the tech industries, people are really thinking about it. They're like, well, what is the end extrapolation? What if we are really going to implant things into people's brains? What kind of classism does that create? We go back from you know, trying to have all men being able to have a shot, here in the US. The goal has always been in the dream for everybody to be able to use their talents and pursue their best possible outcome. Where now we're going, oh, are we going to make it so no matter what you do, unless you have the brain chip, that you can't succeed? So I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the sci people are just thinking about it. So sci-fi is having its day. Um, what else do you think, Scott, in terms of as you've been picking up books?
Right. Well, a couple things to follow up on what you were saying in this age of disclosure, when the government is coming out pretty much saying, "Yep, aliens and spaceships, UFOs. Yeah, it's been real. Yeah, they weren't loonies. Well, some of them were loonies, but But so at Realm Makers, Bill Myers, who's an author you might be familiar with, writing Christian supernatural thrillers, he's also a filmmaker, and they'll be showing a documentary on both Friday, one showing on Friday, one showing on Saturday at the Expo, of UFOs and God. Right? I met Bill at NRB conference, and so it's a Christian worldview UFO documentary, right? Um, as Christians, we can't simply go la 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 la. It's not real. It's not real. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. No, don't talk to me about this. It's like, okay, we have to stop. We have to go. Okay, what is true? What is happening? Let's look at it. Let's discuss it, and let's analyze it. And there's a distance between that moment and discovering truth, right? You don't have truth at the beginning of the pursuit necessarily, but we can go to the Bible to understand what it is that we're seeing. Whereas people who don't believe in the Bible just have to make it up and then think that's true, right? So, so there's that. And in terms of the world of like science fiction is constantly being revealed as fact daily because we've imagined it and then realized it. From the perspective of what's popular right now, well, perhaps you're aware we not only have the mobile Realm Makers bookstore, we have a physical bookstore in the King of Prussia Mall outside of Philadelphia. So we have a general market bookstore in the third largest mall in the United States. has a conspicuously large number of Christian authors on the shelf. It's not Christian fiction. It's just Christians writing fiction, right? And it's right next to all the more popular New York Times bestsellers, things that are being promoted right now. And one thing that's super popular is lit RPG. So role playing games, literary role playing game, to where your characters in the story, if you've played a role playing game where you have, health points and you have certain stats in terms of how strong you are, or how smart you are, or how intuitive you are. And within these stories, the characters are now literally in a game where they like kind of like Jumanji, where you'll see characters like, happen to like scratch their shoulder and all of a sudden, boom, their stats show up, and you accomplish something and then now boom, you've leveled up. You have new powers, right? So it's a very attractive genre, particularly to young men right now in terms of who's buying lit RPG. There are military themes, there are fantasy themes, and it just gives people an opportunity to perceive in themselves that I can pursue something and level up myself. I can level up my strength by going to the gym. Like, you can literally do this in real life. This whole sense of pursuing a talent or a trait and achieving it and moving forward, right? It is not just about playing games. It's not just about occupying yourselves with nonsense, with fiction. This is like not real life. Why are you wasting your time in these things that aren't true? And in reality, the best authors are drawing on truth. They're drawing on our innate desire to have a battle to fight and to win and to rescue the I would say the damsel in distress, but anyone who's a human being would have a desire to go and rescue the victim, right? To save the child, to operate and cure the hurting person, right? Whatever it is that drives you, you're going to be gravitating towards that genre, or maybe it's whatever you lack, right? I could not tell you why. Perhaps you could. We're not talking about it in this podcast, but in the when it comes to what female readers are buying, well, if you want to write a book that sells a lot of books, you write romance, right? So right now, a lot of people tell, oh, these are two great tastes that taste great together. I'm going to take fantasy, I'm going to take romance, and I'm going to put them together, shake them up, roll it out, and see what I get. And then in the it's not in the Christian world, but like in the people are just having fun with it. Like there's a book title I saw a few weeks ago the title was "That Time I Yeeted a Love Potion at a Werewolf."
That's a whole genre unto itself.
You know, and it's like Twilight, only Gen Z, right? And so I'm finding that people really want to laugh, just want to exhale and have fun. There's an author who's going to be at Realm Makers. His name is Z.S. Diamante, Zach, and he's writing among other genres. What I carry at Bookish is his cozy fantasy.
Yeah, that was what I was about to add on to the end of lit RPG. Kind of the opposite side of that a little bit is the cozy. So now people they want something simple too. They don't need the big epic, typical quest. They're like, "Oh, I just want to read about the retired barkeep, and how he's running his little inn or somebody who's decided to become a gardener in they used to be one thing and now their life is simpler." So simplicity is another thing. It seems like um, everything that is true about now people are either going deeper into it, like the dystopian futuristic, or they're going, I just need quiet, and they'll lean toward the cozy.
Yeah, Seth Ring is another example of an author who's going to be at Realm Makers, who's in our community, who's writing lit RPG and combining elements of um, cottage core, as Pam put it, and cozy fantasy, as Becky put it. But and if you remember the movie Braveheart, or I think even The Patriot, are examples of a main character who wants to settle down, and the world won't let them, right? And so out comes their warrior spirit to battle the powers that be. But at their core, they want to get married and have a farm and establish a family. And that is a driving force that is distinctly Christian nowadays. You know, to value family, to value having a home and making it a wonderful place and a nurturing place, as opposed to devaluing home to the point where I'm going to be at work and the kids will be at preschool, and then the kids will be, the kids are taken care of and we'll be doing our things, and then everyone just grows apart. We're all just a victim of the of our circumstances instead of driving what we want to make of our own lives, you know?
Absolutely. Those are
So
great.
humor and going back to square one is a lot of what we see as popular.
That's cool. It's good to know. That kind of brings me around. We're getting to the top of the hour, so we might actually invite some people to get on and to ask questions before we close. But one thing I did want to fall back on, if there's a new author that's coming to Realm Makers for the first time, they've just heard of it. What is something that they can expect from the conference coming as a newbie? What are the things that could serve them or get them involved and connect them with others? What are the details?
Well, the very first thing is the people, the community, the authentic relationships. Like, that's number one.
It's going to be very welcoming. We've heard from our newbies that they were nervous when they showed up because they knew it was going to be a big event, but we make a very strong effort to make sure there are greeters who will show you where to go and help you find your people this year because we have that extra a lot of people are going to be arriving on Wednesday since we start out of the gate on Thursday morning. We're going to work at having a mixer that evening so people can just find people in their genre or find people in their geographic region. Um, and we have a very strong feeling in our heart right now that as the conference grows, we need to keep fostering that community opportunity that, yes, you're going to learn a lot of great things. You're going to be drinking from the fire hose in terms of experts and information. But as in the background, as conference runners, we want to make sure that we are constantly fostering the opportunity for people to actually meet people and have conversations and just enjoy saying, I found people like me, and I can go home and stay on our private social network that we have that we use for the conference app, essentially. And if they remain on the RealmSphere, that they can stay connected to the people that they met at the conference.
Awesome.
And to one of
Dennis
the questions
wants,
in the chat, we do have regional groups that we manage through our private social network that Becky mentioned, the RealmSphere. That's really how we connect the authors in our community to each other 365 days a year.
Good connection.
Dennis asks, will there be a room for introverts to sit in and not talk to each other? Asking for a friend.
There's a lot of beautiful space, honestly, at the hotel. It has a lot of little nooks and crannies where if you're like, I just need to step away, you can go find a nice couch in a corner and just say, I'm over here. Headphones are an amazing tool for going, I need I need some me time. So a lot of people will bring their over-ear headphones or earbuds or whatever in case they just want to sit on a couch and pretend they're staring at their computer. But I feel like this space is uniquely equipped for that sense of I'm just going to sit somewhere comfortable, get off my feet, and just decompress for a little bit because it's true. Conferences are a lot. If your social battery is drained by group activities like mine is, I can ambivert with the best of them, but once I get out of the crowd, I'm just like, can I just be in the dark for a week? Please don't, no words, no one speak to me. So I'm glad that the Union Station has a lot of little places where there's a great go be in isolation for a little bit to recharge.
Now, I know last year we had a prayer room. I'm not familiar with necessarily the planning for this year, but
That we're working on that too, also to have our little prayer ministry that if somebody is feeling like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, or there's something going on at home, that there will be a prayer team to say, hey, let's just sit and talk, or what can we pray for you specifically, just to help people feel like they're being spiritually supported. And that prayer team will also pray for the conference in general, pray for people in their appointments, etc.
Nice.
That sounds like a great opportunity.
Any last minute questions by anybody?
Yeah, feel free to hop on screen if anybody in the crowd wants to come and talk to Becky and Scott in person, or if you don't and you want to post a question in the chat, we can read it out for them. I don't think we put anyone in writer's chat jail, so no, that's our joke for when a video gets cut down off. But yeah, come on in on video if you guys want to.
Thank you, Pam, for putting the link to the Realm Makers in the chat. We appreciate that. Sorry, I mistakenly said Dennis asked that question. It was actually David. I saw that Dennis had previously commented and my brain just jumped to Dennis. It was David here that was asking about a room for introverts. So I'm
That's why
so
you don't
sorry.
have characters in your book with the first letter the same, right?
I have two kids with the letter for first name starts with the same letter, and I was forever calling them each other's names or mixing it's Matthew and Michael, and I would come up with things like Michael or things like that, catching myself midstream. So my apologies to Dennis and David.
it's easier for us now that there's only one of our boys who's ever home, like during the summer, but I
Right?
still call him by the other boys' names.
It's a parent thing. It just is.
It is. It is.
To
Becky,
one of the questions about whether there's a group in Canada that participates with Realm Makers, there's definitely a large community of authors that participate with Realm Makers who come in person or who attend the conference virtually. And we coordinate a lot of that international community virtually. It's We've got folks that have come from New Zealand. Like every year, we have people who come in from New Zealand, even though we offer a virtual option. So it just speaks to the value of being in the presence of your community and being in person to develop those relationships that then are much easier to cultivate throughout the course of the year.
and Melissa, we have one stuck in writer's chat jail.
Oh, we do. Yeah.
What did they do?
I don't know. I don't recall putting anybody in jail.
It's a need to know. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I could tell you, but then I'd have to put you in jail too.
There you go. There you go. Well, anybody have any last minute questions? Or Becky and Scott, is there a way you want to anything else you want to say about the conference? What are the dates of the conference this year?
We are
Yes.
heading, our pre-con is on June 24th, and then the full swing of everything is the 25th to the 27th. Saturday and Friday are days that if people are fans or are not coming for the writers classes, they can get Expo tickets of various levels. And that can be anything from attending the awards banquet, the Realm Awards on Thursday night, which is our cosplay extravaganza. About 50% people come in their favorite cosplay. You can go to that banquet and then do Friday and Saturday with the expo. That's kind of like our top level ticket. Or you can do all the way down to shopping passes, where if you just want to go hang out with the exhibitors and get every amazing book and piece of swag and jewelry and nerd thing that you can dream of, you can do that as well. Anything else you want to add to that, the array of tickets, Scott?
Sure. Well, you described the VIP ticket where you, as a fan, can actually attend each of the three keynotes for the conference, the awards dinner, the costumed awards dinner, and all day Friday and Saturday. And you get a fun swag bag with all sorts of special things. Or you can get a deluxe ticket, which is similar to the VIP ticket, just without the awards dinner. You can get a Friday only, Saturday only, you can get a weekend standard ticket, and as Becky mentioned, we can share the discount code to get a shopping pass. Like if you just want to come into the exhibit hall and shop the exhibit hall without going through any doors into any sessions or panels or screenings, you just want to come in and shop, you can use the discount code RMX26
They
pass.
just got these cool stickers too.
And you can get a free, it's $14.99 for a shopping pass. But with that coupon code RMX26 pass, use that discount code and get a free shopping pass. We're trying to make it easy to get a free shopping pass if you just want to come in and shop and treat it like a book festival, right? But the event is an enormous Christian speculative fiction book festival with a lot of other Christian industries, nerdy, creative industries represented. It's also a film festival. You could treat it like that and just spend your time in the screening room. You could treat it like a symposium on Christians in popular culture. And there are sessions for church leadership and worship ministers and parents of creative kids that are like, I've got this creative kid, I don't know what to do with them. You know, you come from a
Help, my kid
sports
is
background and
creative.
I've got
What
a
do I
creative
do?
kid. I'm like, I don't feel like I want to send him to art school. You know, Becky and I both went to art school. I wouldn't want to send one of my children to art school for what that submerges you in. And so what options are out there? There are Christian schools of art. There are a number of options available to people that we want to be able to bring the audience and the creators together so that the Christian audience can understand the heart behind why Christians are engaged in these industries, and that the church can understand why Christians must be engaged in these creative industries and creating things that are excellent and are permeating popular culture rather than avoiding it, stiff-arming it, right?
Yeah, excellent. Definitely important to pass that on. And we encourage that here in Writers Chat too. Well, I suppose, are there any questions before we close out? We're a little past the top of the hour now. I want to give
I've got a
opportunities.
I've got a quick one. I was just wondering, I'm not sure even what the role is called, but how much need is there for like subject matter experts? Like I'm a physicist. I spent my career in R&D and analytics. Um, I'm basically very good at figuring out feasibility of ideas, what makes sense, what doesn't. Um, how much of a need is there for that type of thing? And I'm not even sure what that's called.
Well, I mean, that would be a mentor. Like we have, in addition to pitch appointments with editors or agents, we also orchestrate mentoring appointments, which that would be exactly what you're talking about. Sometimes that blossoms into an actual session for people who need to learn this. One of our most popular subject matter experts that we've had at the conference every year for the last, I don't know how many years, but Carla Hoke, she is a fight expert, right? She's an expert in multiple forms of martial arts, but also understanding weaponry and how to write a good fight scene that doesn't defy physics to where people who know how to use a knife and you just say something or you injure someone and then you just ignore it for the rest. It's like, you realize they should be dead in 2 hours if you did what you said you did, right? You can't just like bind their wounds and go about your story, right? If they had a poison tipped dagger and they got stabbed, okay, now you must do things or they die.
Like
Right?
Carla likes to put it,
Reality is present in your fantasy as well.
yeah. Carla likes to say, that's not a thing. That is just not a thing.
Don't use the movies for your physics or for
Yeah.
your medical
Right.
information.
She's been at Blue Ridge conference several
Mm-hmm.
times, and her class is always full.
As she workshopped, she just started teaching classes at Realmmakers, and it was those classes where she was workshopping the content that later became Fight Right, the book that was published through Writer's Digest, and then the second one. So it was a real pleasure. It's just one picture of some of the unintentional positive outcomes that Realmmakers has had in our community, and why I, as like not the author, the author's spouse, seeing what's going on and getting drawn in as well as you're finding people um, developing relationships that blossom into marriages and children and families. And
The unspoken side of Realm Makers. We are not running a dating service.
yes, yes, yes. But if you're a nerd, you know, it's it's hard to find other nerds when you're, a Christian. It's easy to find other uh, sports fans, but it's it's a really amazing opportunity to find people that you feel like, oh my goodness, I can relax, I can exhale, and I can talk about my faith without feeling like I have to put boundaries around that because of where I am. But yeah, so Stephen, exercising those mentoring appointments for subject matter experts is how that manifests itself.
Okay.
Whether it's marketing or physics.
Okay.
Well, awesome, guys. I mean, we'll encourage everyone, go to Realm Makers this year, and if you're not sure about it, go check it out. Go to their website and look into it. I think this
It
would
is
be a great opportunity. What? Go ahead.
realmmakers.com. Remember
There you go.
both M's.
Right.
And just quickly, if I could just mention all the different things that Realm Makers has grown into doing. There's the annual conference, which of course it's at the end of June this year, and it will be in the same location, Union Station Hotel, in 2027, back to our third week in July. So I think it's like the July 22nd to the 24th. If you're planning ahead, that's where Realm Makers annual conference will be in 2027. The Realm Awards is a huge amount of the work that Becky does in addition to running the Writers Conference. There are 3 different awards programs. There's the Aurora contest for unpublished authors. There's the Reader's Choice, which is more kind of have your fans vote for what you like best. But then there's the Judged Realm Awards program. This is going to be, like this year is, Becky, the 11th annual awards. It started in 2016. So, yep, this will be the 11th
Yep, this is 11th
annual
go round on
Realm
that.
Awards. And so if you are a Christian and you're writing fantasy or science fiction, December 1st is when submissions open to enter the Realm Awards for a chance to win at our live and live streamed event at the conference. And the retreat is every year in the late winter, early spring, late February, early March, depending. This
This is
year
what the
might
Realm
be an
Awards look
exception.
like if you win a category, by the way. If you
Oh,
win the
yes, we got some honorary awards.
Yes, this is my honorary Realm Award. It would have
Yeah.
your book name and your genre on there.
This is an example of the Book of the Year award. It's a very delicate uh, handmade glass award created by Leah Neitz,
Oh, cool.
who is the author's spouse of Carrie Neitz. So I find that most successful authors have someone beside them who is helping to support their career. But these are just so like delicate and unique. It's kind of fun. But this says the realm's greatest showman. I'm always singing. So my degree is in musical theater. So I extrovert on everyone's behalf at these events. Let's go to a homeschool convention for 2.5 days. We sold 1,200 books last weekend
Oh man.
in 2 days, and it's just open from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Thursday. You know, and it's that's where my heart lives, right? If the authors aren't selling books, isn't this just a lot of vanity, potentially? It could accomplish something, in other people's hearts, but if we're not doing the work that we can be doing to let the audience meet the authors, then we're missing something. So the mobile bookstore events that started in 2018, bringing the authors and the books to the audience. Now with the Expo that started last year, that's striving to bring the audience to the authors, right? So that's what has driven that growth. The efforts that we feel like are necessary to combine, to unite the clans, right?
Awesome.
Thank you all so much for being here. This has been insightful and delightful. And don't be surprised if you get more inquiries about Realm Makers over the next few days from our audience and those who watch the replay later on YouTube. Which, speaking of which, if you are new to our audience, we have a YouTube channel, Writers Chat Show. Is that right, Melissa?
Yep.
Or is it just Writers Chat?
It's just youtube.com/writers chat.
Chat.
And that's our new home. We used to be kind of off on Serious Writers Chat. We have a link to the past 300 episodes that have been on Writers Chat because we've been going strong since 2015. And so, yeah, obviously you're probably watching it on YouTube if you're watching the replay, but if you are, we encourage you to like and subscribe so that you can get future episodes and connect with awesome people like Scott and Becky, and go check out Realm Makers. And with that, I guess I should also talk about what we're going to do next week. This is probably backwards in your camera, but
That's
we
right.
are going to have a book chat discussing writing with emotion, tension, and conflict. And so we're going to kind of hit some of the highlights of that book and give you some good takeaway. That's the book is written for fiction, but we think that we can also draw some good takeaway for nonfiction writers as well. And we encourage you to check out that book and learn from it, add it to your tool chest as writers. So that'll be what's going on next week. We encourage you to join us then. Thank you again for joining us live today. And we're going to break for our after party. So those who are here with us live, stick around and we'll chat with you later. And for those who are watching, well, come join us on Facebook at the Writers Chat Members Facebook group, and then you can be here live on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Go around the globe for your time. And well, we'll see you then. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
See you next week.